What motivated you to join this world of technology?
How a simple technology can actually help in making the big impact in terms of the billing for an organization. I think that I would call it as a starting point as to how it really fascinated me, excited me, and also challenged me to start my career.
Have evolved your journey in different workplaces, different roles, and was it ever difficult for you to adjust in the workplace?
I think for sure each and of you have your own internal challenges as to how do you really make this. But I would call it as, the noise versus the filter. So as you move up in your journey, both personally and professionally, I think we need to learn to understand which are the noises, filter those noises, aim at things which you want to really focus on.
So in the technology world or even personally, have you ever considered someone as your role model?
I think Mr. Ratan Tata has been really a role model. The vision that he had for India is not about making India as the most powerful economy, but it is about making a happy place to be in, right? So that states that the intent is the most important.
So what is the one advice that you would give to the people entering this field?
Whoever is entering into this AI now, I would say keep learning. That's the biggest advice I would say, because things are rapidly changing.
So personally, do you feel in the coming years AI will really take up the technology? Welcome to Industry Voice, a podcast where we cover real stories, insights, and journeys of industry experts. Some leaders drive transformation with speed and others with depth. And today's guest brings both. Hemalatha Sangwikar, Director and Emerging Practice Lead Global Services Delivery at Google Cloud Consulting, has over 25 years of experience leading cloud, SAP, AI, and digital transformation across global organizations. Welcome to Industry Voice.
Thank you so much, Kritika, for inviting me for this podcast.
Before we dive into deeper topics, if you had to explain your job to someone outside the technology world, what does a director and emerging practice lead at Google Cloud do?
Yeah, very interesting question. Been done this technology for several years. I'm just thinking, how do you really explain this to somebody who doesn't understand technology? Probably I'll take like this because, I'm sure each one of us have tried a lot of our recipes from home, from our mothers. Yeah. So, from chef at home, to restaurant chain, and to Michelin star this thing. Let's see the comparison, right? I think if I would have been at home, my mother would have prepared a wonderful, recipe, and that's something which is very, very special to her. And you will not see that many different people have different kinds of ways to do the recipe. But when you come to the restaurant, I think, the chefs have their own recipes, their own secret sauces. How do you really need to make this? And then you come to the chain. I think they kind of standardize the way how you need to have the recipe. They have their own secret sauce as to how this needs to be done. But, why I gave this analogy is we all are very close to food. So we know how this whole chef from the home till the restaurant works. Now, if I have to tell you from my role perspective, I think I would call it as the practice that I'm leading is more like experimental chain. Somebody is giving you a place where you can experiment. You really understand the taste of different kinds of people. And then you prepare something very, very specific for your guest, right? So I lead the practice where I experiment, kind of innovate what really my customers are really looking for. So that's in short what I really do with my practice. Now, when it comes to me as my role as a director, I think I would call myself as someone like a chief chef. Okay. Where my role is not about going and cutting onions, but my role is something, the menu strategy. What is that I would, from 5 years from now, or 10 years from now, what the people would really like to eat, because now people have become very healthy. looking for a lot of healthy habits, what is that would really resonate well with them. I have a set of my master chefs who are my practice leads, who helps in really taking care of those individual practices. So that's how I would like to really explain what's my, what is it I'm leading as a practice. It's more of an experimental kitchen, and my role as a executive chef with my master chefs who is helping me to create that kind of impact.
I really love how and the chef analogy into your world.
Yeah.
So now if we take a step back, and I would really want to know what motivated you to join this world of technology.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, probably when I started my career somewhere in 1999, I was just thinking that, what is that really that will help me to grow in my career. So having come from my background, I really wanted to see what is it I can achieve. So when I started in 1999, I think I started my career in Wipro, and that's where I just came in. I still remember the day one when I was in MG Road office in Bangalore, and we had a group of around I would say 20 people. We were just asked to be there as part of the one of the very critical function within Wipro, which we call it as the CIO office. And they do a lot of those technology, the applications, serving the whole Wipro as a landscape. Mm. Now, when I entered in MG Road in 99, there was a bunch of engineers who were surrounding a lead. And they were like, we were having a lot of, I could see a lot of pressure, a lot of discussions going around. And then after some time, around an hour or so, I just saw a lot of great applause from the way that they had solved the problem. Two things really struck me. I think, it really excited me. Probably I'm going to be part of that particular team because that brought in some kind of energy. Yeah, I'm going to do something. I'm going to solve something for the organization. And the second thing is it also brought a lot of sense of ownership and responsibility that I need to carry as part of this role, because this particular role is actually going to take care of the Wipro's complete billing system. So that's where it really fascinated me, how a simple technology can actually help in making the big impact in terms of the billing for an organization. I think that I would call it as a starting point as to how it really fascinated me, excited me, and also challenged me to start my career.
So how has been your journey so far?
Yeah, probably I'll take a step back and talk about in terms of how has been my career since this 25 years. Let me take an example of an aviation industry. I think each one of us know how the whole aviation industry works. I would call it as when I started my career, I was more like a mechanical pop, where I've been given the nuts and bolts. Yeah. Please go and fix from the the aeroplane perspective. So that's how I started my career. My job was to really fix things for the customers to take on. And then slowly my journey shifted a little bit. Yeah, having known all these things, why don't you actually, I'll give you a plane for you to take care of this entire fleet system, kind of see what can you do in terms of the overall maintenance protocol for all these fleets to run smoothly. So that's my next stop in my journey on the aviation. So that's where I started leading some of these transformation programs, where my technology, is something very passionate to me. And then, as I moved on my career, I think, I learned how do we do all these maintenance protocols, how do you take care of this whole fleet system. That's where, the next stop came in, where, they said, okay, how to know this maintenance protocol of this fleet. Why don't you actually, I'll give you this, jet. You'll have to actually lead this whole plane, right? And that's where, there's a lot of thunder, and you'll have to really navigate the systems very carefully. And there's a lot of ambiguity, right? And you have to really land the plane safely. So that's the responsibility that was given as part of my whole career. And last but not the least in my career, I think, just imagine you've been given a space program. It's not that I know every circuit, how it works in the whole space, but I'm expected to navigate this whole ambiguity, ensure that I was able to get into the orbit and land smoothly. So that's how I would kind of um, compare my whole journey as part of my career. Now that's from my whole professional perspective. I would like to call probably from my personal journey as well. I think personal journey is something also has been very truly challenging. I would not call it as challenging. It's been interesting. I would call it and exciting. I come from the southern part of India, which is like, Chennai. Many of you are aware of it. Never been I've never studied probably Hindi, not studied any of the languages. That's how I started my career. And then I was really thrown into a place where today, if you see, I moved to, Bangalore for my Wipro as my first organization. And that's how I, married to Narendra, who's from, Maharashtrian from Mumbai. It's been I would say the challenge for me. So personally, along with my daughter, I started learning Marathi. So that brought me a lot of adaptability, understanding of the culture and nuances. I think personally that also helped me to grow professionally. So that's been my journey in terms of professional and personal.
So you have evolved your journey in different workplaces, different roles, and currently, as you also mentioned, that you did not stop the learning process. You came to Mumbai, you came to Maharashtra basically. You also started learning Marathi. So was it ever difficult for you to adjust in the workplace?
I would tell it this way, right? I think for sure each of you have your own internal challenges as to how do you really meet this. But I would call it as, the noise versus the filter. Mm-hmm. So as you move up in your journey, both personally and professionally, I think we need to learn to understand which are the noises, filter those noises, and then really aim at things which you want to really focus on. Of course, as part of your own professional and personal, you will see a lot of those noises around you in terms of how you're really going to do things. I think if you're really laser focused on what you really want to achieve, just kind of apply the filter, like how we have the water filter, apply those filter, and the outcome is the most important.
So everyone has a role model, I would say. So in the technology world or even personally, have you ever considered someone as your role model?
Yeah, of course. I think there are several role models for me. I can't really say, one role model or other. I think probably first I'll talk about a little bit from the whole industry perspective.
Yeah.
And then I'll talk about even from my own professional perspective, right? One is from the industry. I think Mr. Ratan Tata has been really a role model. I think it's not about building the engineering things. It's not about how to invent medicines or etc. I think the vision that he had for India is not about making India as the most powerful economy, but it is about making a happy place to be in, right? So that states that the intent is the most important, and the positive movement from where we are is the most critical stuff. I think I always believe in that. And of course, there are a lot of other role models that I have really seen as you start, as I start taking over the roles, multiple roles. I think even my, I would call it as, Sunil, who is my current manager, who is leading the whole global services and Google Cloud. I've really learned a lot of stuff in terms of thriving in ambiguity. I think it's a real ambiguous place. How do you really need to thrive, filter the noise, keep moving forward for you to achieve things is something, amazing for me to learn.
So, you have completed a PMP certification. So, could you just explain what exactly PMP certification is?
Yeah. So, I think I'll just tell you, I think, when I did PMP, I'll tell you it was somewhere after my 10 years of my career is when I did my PMP. So I would call it as PMP is like, it's a it's a framework for you to guide things. But what you have really learned in terms of the delivery, I think, that kind of gives you the life experience of how do you need to deal with things. And there's nothing to get scared on PMP, I would say. I think it is like PMP is more like a noise. You use the filter to learn those framework, abstract those principles. Of course, a lot of things, from my experience after going through this PMP, having done a lot of those transformation programs, a lot of those experience, I would say I could see how that framework has been put based on those best practices and experience. So from my personally, I think it's not a monster. I think if you have the real experience of navigating this world, I'm sure a lot of those things is like, reassuring you that that's the framework which has been used by many people and it is successful in terms of the complex transformation programs.
So PMP takes a lot of continuous learnings and you have to re-evaluate yourself every 5 years. So how did you stay updated?
Yeah, see, learning never stops. In fact, it's not just PMP today. When I lead a lot of those things, I think, learning is a continuous process. I think you have to keep evolving yourself, learn new things. And I'm sure as part of this leadership role, I think this is a big lesson for me in terms of in this AI world as well. It's not about learning the nuances on the field. It's the most important. What's really happening? There are a lot of things which is very silent. It's for the leadership team to really understand what's happening in the environment and take it forward. So from that perspective, I think I do not see that as a challenge. It's your experience brings in a lot more way of understanding how things really work, and PMP is more of reassuring you the same best practices, etc., on what needs to come in.
So if you had to give an advice to anyone who is actually working to be a PMP aspirant or want to take that exam, any advice that you want to give them?
So I think firstly, I would just call PMP is not a monster. Yeah. So just wanted to call out, it's a way of reassuring what you have been doing is in the right way of doing things. So my only advice is, learn from your experience. I think those wild scars will teach you a lot. And that is what is getting reassured through your PMP. So my one advice is keep learning. I think till the learning never stops. And I'm sure the PMP brings in a lot of those experiences from various people which you can't learn by yourself. So that's the advice I would say. I think, we cannot have one life to learn everything. So I'm sure you get to learn a lot of things through the experiences, and the framework is being put together based on a lot of those kind of complex programs which customers are demanding. I think there's absolutely no fear. You just keep doing the things and learn from those new frameworks.
So throughout your journey, you have managed both technology and people. Which is more harder to manage?
Very, very interesting question. I think probably I'll take a little bit of a step back and kind of explain how do I see the technology versus people, right? I think if I have to put like a simple, you would have seen the match the following or match the table or something like differences, right? I would like to call something like that. In technology, I know, if I put input A, I know my output will be B. There is some kind of assurance for me in terms of how the technology is predictable, I would call it as. The moment it is people, you put input A, the output could be B, C, or people, you'll see some resignation. So it's something which is very unpredictable, right? And now the second is, if I have to really look at between technology and people, I think, errors. I'm sure every technology, it gives an error. It has an error log. You can read through the errors. And then you will be able to fix it, right? But when it comes to people, I really look at it, there's no error log. You're not able to really understand what has really gone wrong. And it's all about trust, right? And if the trust is broken, it's like the mirror. If it's broken, you just cannot, even if you kind of patch it, it's not the same. So I think people is so sensitive from that perspective. And third, I really like to see the comparison for me from technology to people is probably from the angle of, the predictability, the consistency, right? You will not see that kind of consistency. You will see that in the technology consistently performing, but people have their own ups and downs. And as a leader, you need to be like I would call it as you need to be like a thermostat, not a thermometer. So why do I call that kind of analogy as, thermometer actually helps you to measure the temperature, but thermostat sets it. So you need to know what to filter so that the pressure doesn't go down to the team and the people trust you and your leadership and they're able to work for it. So I think, managing the teams, the global teams and the people, from my experience, I think one thing which has really worked for me is empathy. I think with people, you need to have a lot of empathy. And second is trust. And the third one I would call it as is, being with them during the times that they need. And also, I would call it as, there's a term that we call it as psychological safety. Why we call that as more of, don't judge the people. Of course, when you do a lot of those experiments, it fails, but learn from it and move on. So I think that kind of helps me from the people leadership role.
So you mentioned that you have built teams globally. Now, what is your approach while you build teams across the globe? Because there'll be a lot of time differences and you have to manage the different cultures as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think building the teams across the globe is something I would say definitely not an easy recipe because there's a culture, right? I think you just need to really understand. Of course, we have seen from the regional perspective, like how each of the culture really behaves and works. So there's a nuance to it. So from my view, I think as me who has been managing the teams across the various cultures and various regions, I follow 2-3 things from my leadership style. One is I maintain a lot of those, transparency and read me kind of stuff. So I kind of tell my whole teams, like, what is that? What is my vision? What I really want to achieve? What's the end goal? So that kind of read me and transparency is something really helped me because people are in different time zones. You just cannot be on a 24 hours like battery working throughout the night. So that really kind of helped me in terms of building that. Second is, I think, sometimes there are a lot of nuances, specifically, right? Unspoken stuff, which you can actually sense on the room, which nobody can sense it, right? If you are a leader, you are there, you understand a lot of those unspoken words, unspoken things, which actually helps you to really lead the teams in the race. So one, for that, how do you really need to address is, empathy, really, be in their shoes, understand their point of view, do not judge, kind of give them the freedom to do experiment, and then do a postmortem as to how do you really bring those learnings back for you to execute things on. So I think that kind of helped me in terms of building the trust. And the third thing is filter, as I keep saying, how do you really filter the noise? Like I'm sure when you navigate a lot of those key visions, what your own organization has been setting up, you need to know what you need to really bring it down to the people, what you need to really absorb. So you'd have seen a lot of shock absorber in car, right? So you can't bring the shocks to everyone who's there on the car. What needs to go down needs to go down. So that helps the team below you to perform with ease. I think those are the 3 principles that I apply when I kind of work with my teams, globally and regionally.
So while managing teams globally, you also have to manage your home, your family. So is that a challenge or it's very smooth?
Of course, it's definitely, it comes with its own, pros and cons in terms of working as well as personally. And there's no single size that fits for all. I think each one of the people in the leadership team, from the women as well as men, they have the different ways to tackle their own personal as well as the professional thing. From my perspective, what I kind of do is I kind of ensure that I allocate few hours of time for me to spend with my with my daughter, or for me to spend for things at home, right? And one thing we just have to understand, I think we have personally we have gone up the career from the home. We always think there's a fear. I have seen that if I'm not there, things will not happen. Somewhere we'll have to start building the trust and and have the people in the house delegated to take on things and give that kind of freedom. And I'm sure things will not be the way that you want to be, but there will be some new ways to execute the things as well and move on. I think that's one philosophy I just follow. There's no right or wrong way of doing things. You just have to manage things in a way that give that space for the people at home also to manage the way they want to do the things.
Yeah. So with 25 years of experience and the different job roles that you have evolved through, you have led and managed 100 plus teams across different job profiles. Is there any funny incident or a memorable incident that you would want to share?
Oh yeah, of course. I can share something about, I'm not sure if it is very funny, but it's a very memorable incident. So as part of my journey, as I was saying, my job is actually experimenting in the kitchen and then taking it as a master chef. So in one of my role, when I was embarking on the journey to transform the customer landscape, it was, I would call it as, just 4 hours or 5 hours away from the go live. There were huge and critical issues that started coming in on the new system. And, all the customer stakeholders are there. And the entire set of my engineers were really deep down working on things to ensure that they solve the problem so that they are able to move on. There was an urgent meeting that was called on, and the decision was taken that they were not trusting that the system would do things the right thing after go live. And the decision was taken to roll back. I think that's something which is very, very memorable for me, because the team has been working on several months together in terms of helping them transform their landscape. And few of those critical issues, kind of throttled and brought it back. And the system was rolled back. So that's something which is really, really memorable, which I still remember. And of course, since then, I think, the team and the entire ecosystem had to really put in a lot of effort in terms of blameless postmortem to really see what really went wrong. Of course, and we need these teams to be taken forward. So as I was saying, the team who worked on it to be taken forward. So that's where, the next few months we were putting a lot of framework and the processes in place, and a lot of those noises were filtered, right? I'm sure, was acting as a shock absorber in terms of absorbing things, and see how do you not really send those signals to the teams below you, so they are able to focus on the mission that they need to achieve for. And I want to really call out that 6 months since that incident happened, I think because of a lot of those frameworks and a lot of those processes and taking the team along in terms of the filter versus noise, we were able to successfully transform their systems on the cloud. So that's something which is very, very, very memorable for me, and which, in my career, there's a lot of, I would call it as the wild scars. I would like to take it forward as an experience and learning.
So there's a myth that people say that adopting AI is very complex in traditional businesses. What is your take on that?
So, of course, a lot of those traditional enterprises, they work the way that they have been set for, right? I think, the example of the chef at home, if you still go and ask your mother, she will say, I make the best food at home, right? But restaurants can also still prepare in a very different way. It's very difficult, for someone to really think that, something else can actually do much better than us. Yeah, that's more of a human tendency, I would call it as. See, AI is, I think from our experience, what we keep telling is AI is for you to support you to be successful in what you want to do. And I'll just take an example of a lot of those, banks or insurance organizations, or for that matter, retail industry. I think we keep calling our banks, my payment has been detected wrongly. We keep calling our airline system. I want to update my flight to a different timeline. What this AI kind of is doing now is actually more and more customers are really moving towards taking those services, and we need to give the right experience. So AI is like supporting you in terms of providing that kind of experience, so that the call centers are not kind of choked. They are able to have some of those virtual agents contain a lot of those calls with the right data and details for the customer to really, close the queries. And then comes the human, in case if it has to get escalated. So the human comes in to really give certain exceptional responses or some additional details. So that's the analogy I would like to call here. So AI is not here to replace, but it is something which is going to help you in doing your things much better. And second, it is also going to help you in probably, you taking up something better and better. Like the way I have explained on my journey, probably you started off as a person who is engineered to nuts and bolts, but you want to really manage a space now. If you have to manage, you need the bandwidth for you to take on some of those innovations. So AI is actually going to help you to move in your career in terms of taking those innovations, while some of those tasks that needs to be handled is taken care by the AI.
In today's technology era where AI, ML, these are the things that are really evolving fast. So how do you keep upskilling your team?
Okay, that's definitely, a very good question. I think each one of us, the things are rapidly changing, right? I think I wouldn't call the upskilling as a big problem. I think it's more of execution. Where I see as a challenge is the strategy and vision, where things will head in next few years. So am I able to put a plan to, kind of experiment the things before it can be scaled and taken to other people? So I would call that as the biggest point of topic that I need to focus from my leadership perspective, while upskilling is more of the byproduct, right, in terms of how am I going to have the upskilling. So a few things, as a executive chef, one of the key things is to really look for the dynamics, the market, where is it really moving, where things are heading, what are the few things that is coming up. Now it's all about AI. Now we are in the era of AI. Every organization is undergoing transformation today. If you look at it from your phone perspective, I think you see from Gmail to WhatsApp, everywhere the AI is integrated and it is helping you to do things much better. In terms of the upskilling, I think 2-3 things I do from my whole perspective. As we are more of the the experimental kitchen, one of the key work is also to really work with the engineering team and the product team and really kind of understanding the way forward. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, what the market will really look for. Can we really look for implementing those solutions, bring the customer, experiment it with some of your VIPs, and then see how do you take the feedback back. I see that as the biggest upskilling because, we are learning practically as to what the customer is looking forward from this particular product. That's the biggest upskilling. followed on. We really have a lot of those courses. We ensure that our teams goes through it more in terms of theoretically understanding the whole framework, how it really operates, but more of, I upskill my team more in the form of an experimental fashion, right? Where people really do things for some of their customers, learn from it, take the feedback, work with the product and eng team, and then bring that recipe forward to 50 plus, people, right? So I see that's the way of really looking at upskilling, and not just only, theoretical, but also bring in a nuance of, learning from, experiencing.
So personally, do you feel in the coming years AI will really take up the technology?
It's already taking up, right? I think you see the AI everywhere. I spoke about, every places that you will see, you will have the AI coming in. That's only going to help you to do things innovatively and at speed. And you are able to actually focus on the key aspects of the strategy, the vision, etc. Right? So that's something which is given, and it is really, you are already seeing the customers have started really embarking on this journey, and where we are not, there is definitely a fear of being left out. I think that's really going to come in, and every industry is being already, as you see here, healthcare. There has been a lot of work that has been happening on healthcare in terms of AI, in terms of, the retail, how do you really optimize the whole inventory? How do you really look for, optimizing the fleet operations, right? I think there's a lot which we can do, and it is it works at speed, and it is going to help us bring those kind of bigger outcome for what we are working on.
So a lot of people don't really understand how to use AI to the best level. Some people keep misusing them. Some people don't use it till the best level. So what is the one, maybe a tip or something that you would want to share with people to think about when they use AI?
Yeah, I think the one thing, more than a tip, I would say, use it responsibly.
Yeah.
I think that's very important, because use it for the right intent and for the right purpose. That's my one advice I would give it for the people who are embarking on the journey of AI. And of course, every organization is doing it. I think AI should be looked at as not a replacement of a human, but it is more of working side by side with the human in terms of, elevating the work of the human.
So what is the one advice that you would give to the people entering this field?
The advice that I would give the people, I think, having seen from even right from the Y2K era till now, I think I've seen a lot of those shifts happening in this whole industry of technology. So whoever is entering into this AI now, I would say keep learning. That's the biggest advice I would say, because things are rapidly changing and you need to adapt to what's really coming up. So you stay focused, stay on top of things as to what we are having. Second, I would like to learn, it's while technology solves the challenges for you, my advice to is, it's not about, technology is about how, right? How you need to solve it. But the biggest advice I would say is try to understand the why, right? Why is it important for your customer? Is it something that you want to reduce their whole travel cost? Why is it important? That why part of it is extremely important. How anyway comes from the technology part of it. So I would say learn the why along with the how. I think that's where things are moving.
So as a woman in technology, what is the major challenges you faced during your journey?
Of course, everyone goes through these challenges, their own pie of challenges as you navigate this whole complexity. Yeah. I think one I would call it as more in terms of, as you do some of those experiments, right, in your kitchen, certain things you will see a success, some may fail. right? I think, the one of the thing I've seen is do not blame your own leadership that point in time. I would say have a very calm way of looking at it to see what is that you can learn from this failure. I think that's something, which I really want. It's not the women leadership or any other leadership who has failed, but there is something in terms of the process or in terms of the way that it needs to be handled better is what we have to learn from it. I think that's something, don't be so hard to yourself. I would call it this way. Look at what you can learn as part of your journey and bring it on, right? And of course, this is more from the professional perspective, personally as well. I think you will definitely have a guilt in terms of, why am I not spending so much of time personally? But I would call it this way. Don't hurt, be over hard on yourself. I think you are setting a role model for yourself personally, also in your family, for them to look at what you really want to achieve. Right? I think I would call it from these two aspects. That's how you need to look at it.
If you are 25 right now, so what would you learn in the next couple of months to stay relevant for the next year, maybe?
Yeah, I think, I was talking about it, one is the how part of it, another one is the why part of it. If I would be 25, I think, I would urge all of us to really understand the why part of it. I would also be doing the why part of it. Why? What it makes sense, and how this business is working. What is that you can help to solve for this business? So the why part of it is most important. Focus on the why along with the how. I think that is the game changer for me in terms of this whole era of AI.
Yeah. So lastly, we'll play a quick rapid fire round. Sure. So, cloud or AI, what excites you the most?
I'm not sure if I can say cloud or AI. I call cloud as a runway and AI is the journey, and both goes hand in hand. So it's like a foundation, and AI is on top of it.
So would you build something from scratch or fix something that is broken?
So I would call it as it depends on the circumstances. One, when I started my whole career, I was fixing the problems, right? And that gave me a lot of experience to take on. But now I love to do a lot of things from the scratch, because that's where you're visioning for how things needs to be.
So would you prefer a boardroom presentation or a whiteboard brainstorming session?
I think both brings its own nuance from my perspective. I think boardroom helps you to pitch the idea and then get the approvals for you to move forward with something which is very innovative. But the whiteboarding is what actually sparks the lot of ideas that we need to build together.
Yeah. So do you believe that certifications or theory knowledge are enough, or do you think that we get more knowledge when we are on real projects?
So I would say certifications is more of a door opener, and the why scarce is what actually give you the experience of how you need to do the things. So I would like to give another analogy there, right? I think, when you go and get a license for all your 4-wheelers or 2-wheelers, so your license is more of your door opener, but your real experience of whether you can drive in a traffic is your own experience. Yeah. So both goes hand in hand. Can I have only experience and no certification? No, it's like a license that actually kind of credentialize you that yes, you know things.
So data-driven decisions or gut instinct?
I strongly believe in data-driven because that gives a lot of insights in terms of what's really going around and how do you really take the right decisions moving forward based on what you see on the data.
So late night global calls or early morning strategy discussions?
Early morning strategy discussions. That sounds very interesting for me. It's like early morning Suprabhat.
So, scale fast or scale right?
I always believe in scale right. Always you can scale fast, but that doesn't give the quality that it needs. But scale right is the right thing, because we always look at what is why and then we scale.
So, one word you live by as a leader?
Passion. I think that's something I live by as a leader.
One tech word you think is very overused in the industry?
Disruption. I see that as something overused. I think that too, especially in this era, you will see these words heavily used by everyone. Yeah, this is AI is disrupting the space. It's going to bring down a lot of jobs down. I think that's something which is overly used from my point of view.
If your career had a hashtag, what would it be?
Scale with AI.
If AI replaced you for a week, let's say, so what would it struggle the most with?
Oh, that's very interesting. I think I would call it as two things. One is if AI replaces me, I think AI will learn to overthink, probably like me. That's something which I can say. Second is, I think AI, while it is definitely there for a week, it will not be able to understand the silence and the nuance that is there on the room, which the human can capture, right? So I believe strongly in these two things. What AI can do, AI replaces me for a week. What it can and what it cannot do.
So it was lovely talking to you, and thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. Your journey had a clarity and a perspective, and it's very insightful and inspiring that you shared it with us. Thank you so much for joining.
Sure, definitely. Probably before we close this, I would want to close with a very funny incident. I was, throughout my journey, I keep meeting the customers, talking to them across the world. One funny incident I still remember. I think I went to Europe, probably in the early part of my career, and my customer was in Germany. Then I took the flight on to Switzerland. Then I went there, met them. So in Switzerland, I think we all know it's extremely costly. You cannot take your own taxi and travel to the locations to the customer. So what I did is I actually took the public transport. So it was, in the early part of my careers, I was a little bit of, fear and anxiety as to how things would be. So I just stepped down. I went to the station where I took the train service. I was like, it was about 45 minutes for me, right, on the train to reach the destination. I was very deeply, doing some work in the laptop. And then after some time, I didn't realize, okay, after some time, I just saw on the station, a lot of people were just looking at me from the, on the platform. I just looked at it and see, is there anyone near me? I saw no one. Then I realized, I think that the train has actually come and stopped, and everyone have got down and the train is locked. It was something which is really memorable. I just then I had to call someone from the outside. That the guard came in, and then they had to open the train to let me out. So that's something which is really funny, and I still remember. We just need to know how things work in each of the countries, and you can't be deep in yourself. You really miss the nuances. Thank you so much for having me here. I think pleasure meeting you all today, and I hope it was a very good discussion.